welcome to another episode of the Hoopsfix Podcast with me, your host Sam Neater, full-time British basketball advocate. It's been a little while, been a very busy couple of months, but I'm glad to be back, hopefully getting back on the regular scheduled programming. And on this week's show, we have a very special guest, none other than Jay Marriott. You may know him from his escapades on the BBL show, a weekly podcast that the BBL does, former Plymouth Raiders coach, but now the CEO of Gloucester Sport. A brand new franchise which has been accepted into the WBBL for this season and is intending to enter the BBL in 2022. I thought it was a perfect time to have a conversation with him, find out the process, what goes on behind the scenes of trying to get a franchise off the ground. You know, we've heard the need for the league to expand and grow over the years, but the obvious places, the Birminghams of the world, for example, was not the one that jumped first. It was actually Gloucester. So it came as a big surprise, and it seemed to happen very, very quickly. So yeah, it's really good to get him on the show and kind of talk about the ins and outs of what has gone into the whole process over the last year or so of trying to get it off the ground and kind of what they're thinking about heading into not only this WBBL season, the NBL season, and then heading into the BBL for next year. So yeah, really good conversation, which I think will provide a little bit more insight into the behind the scenes of running a franchise in this country. I've got a lot of value out of it, and I am sure you will too. As always, before we get into the show, please take 2 seconds to check out our Patreon account, patreon.com/hoopsfix, patreon.com/HOOPSFIX. There you can sign up to give us a monthly or annual contribution of as much or as little as you like. That helps us do the work that we're doing. We're trying to grow this British basketball media landscape thing, and we cannot do it without your support. Please consider, for the price of a cup of coffee, for the price of a sandwich, every single month. It goes a long way in helping us do what we're doing. So please go and check it out, patreon.com/hoopsfix. As always, you can reach out to me on every single social media platform at Hoopsfix. You can drop me an email, sam@hoopsfix.com, if you prefer some one-on-one interaction. But yeah, please do let me know, and I would look forward to hearing from you. That's enough from me. Here is this week's show with me and Jay Marriott. Jay, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, mate. Appreciate it.
So it's been a few weeks kind of back and forth trying to make this happen, and we finally got it happen. Obviously, a lot going on your end, and there's been a lot of talk online, a lot of interest into the newest sort of basketball franchise that people have seen. And I think the place to start is kind of where it started. Like it all seems to have happened very quick, and I'll be interested to kind of hear from your side when you first got murmurs of the Gloucester project and when it sort of started becoming a reality that this was going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, you kind of pop up on social media and everybody thinks that's your timeline, right? Everybody thinks that's the go time, but there's enough sort of grey flecks to suggest that this has been for a while. But yeah, I mean, the story in a nutshell, I guess, is, myself and the owner, Alex Petheram, we go back, maybe 20 odd years. He's been a sponsor of a lot of different sports. As we progressed, he's become a wealthier man. I've maybe become a more knowledgeable man, hopefully. And those two things kind of collided in a conversation last year. There was some interest, there was some approach from locally that were talking about, would he invest in basketball, and he was like, yeah, I love basketball. Kind of looked into it. They wanted to build through the leagues, and I guess as those conversations progressed, he wanted to know how much does it cost to own a BBL franchise, how much does it cost to own a WBBL franchise, where could it go? Where could we put it? How could it be? And, that's where the conversation started, really. He just asked me to take a call. We made a few inquiries. We looked at a few different sort of situations, few venues, those kind of things. And then it kind of looked like it could become a reality. So, he's been 3 years now involved in a football club there, Gloucester City Football Club. He's managed to bring them back to the city after having to move because of floods in 2007. He's built kind of a £3.5 million stadium that constructively has been built above the floods. He kind of he's there. He's invested. He wants to be invested in sport. Yeah, and that's kind of where it all began, and it kind of snowballed from there. So I'd say last year, and then we kind of looked to put our business plan in and around January. So it's been a while.
What just for the specific timelines? When did you first hear of it last year?
So I'd say probably going into maybe September time, we started having a conversation. So I think in that summer, Alex had been approached, and there were a few people that wanted to take on the project. And I think Alex is just a bigger picture guy, So like he's a businessman first and foremost, So it was like, okay, if we support a club from Division 3 all the way through, like how does that look? How do we implement community? How do we implement partnerships? How do we implement sponsorships? And so, I mean, I think that's where the initial reach out came. Was he was like, okay, well, if we took this bigger, if we really went for it, and I was really all in, what does that actually look like?
And then in terms of like who is actually behind it, it's very much you and Alex are kind of the faces of the franchises, and kind of in all the press releases, communications. I did see within the research that I did that his business partner Eamon McGurk is he kind of one of the co-owners as well, and then you've got a commercial manager as well. Like, kind of who are the people involved? Who's sort of behind the scenes?
Yeah, so Eamon very much is kind of behind the scenes. He's a backseat passenger really with the basketball. He just wants to observe, support, and of course, if we need him, if we need to tap into his knowledge or anything else like that, he's there. Predominantly, he's the co-owner of what we essentially know as Gloucester Sport. So that's what I'm the CEO of. So he's the co-owner of that, but he's predominantly involved in the football. So very much in the background, Alex is kind of driving the ship. He's the owner of the franchise for the basketball solely. So
he's 100% owner of the franchise.
Yeah, so it's kind of lots of moving pieces. So you've got the football club where they're co-owners, you've got the Gloucester Sport, which they're co-owners of, and then Alex is kind of gone at that as a sole owner in the franchise. And then if down the line, Eamon's enjoying what he's seeing, there's always room there. I mean, those guys are together no matter what. If you look at them from a business, if you look at them from a sport, if you look at their friendship, they are probably one, So yeah, he's going it alone at the minute. He wants to make the sole decisions, and then obviously I'm sat just behind him. Commercial manager wise, we're still looking to fill that position again. So sadly, the guy we wanted to bring in, I think, is returning back to Cheltenham Football Club. That's where his heart kind of was. So we're left having to look for that again. So yeah, those are the moving pieces really. I probably should give a shout out to kind of Claire Lane, who sits in the background for us. She's Alex's PA, and she's doing a lot more work than she should be doing, so she deserves a shout out. And then we're just trying to put the structure in, like we said offline, is that's the most important bit to a franchise right now, is everything that's going on behind the scenes, not necessarily what's going on in front of it.
So when you're, September, you're having these initial conversations, you're looking at kind of what it would take, how much it would cost. What were your kind of conclusions when you assessed the opportunity? What sort of budget, you don't need to go into the budget of what it's actually ended up being, but at that point, when you were looking at the money that you'd need to raise or have access to be able to fund ultimately the goal is WBBL and a BBL franchise, what were those costs looking like?
Well, I think you got to be ready for a lot bigger commitment than maybe people see on the outside. So you got to buy your franchise, right? And that can be divided up into a few different pieces or whatever else, or you can just buy it outright. So you've got an outlay there of finance, and then you're looking at you're looking at putting the team together. You're looking at and people might see that as just a player roster, but that's not. That's, unless you own your facility, that's like, where are you going to play? What does that look like? You also have to factor in is how strong is that partnership? So we've seen. I think we've seen with Plymouth, for example. You got to be really, really careful. I mean, they've had a 10-year relationship there with Pavilions, and they still weren't able to get it over the line. So that that comes with some nerves and some trepidation around what you do with partnerships. So yeah, I mean, it's a heavy investment. You're looking at your franchise. Your franchise fee, and then you probably add in that again just to get a season under your belt as well. So I think you have to be realistic. There's probably you're probably looking at 3 years of your own investment, at the very least. And if you're not prepared to do that, then you're probably going into the wrong investment, I think. So, our aim is to be much more sustainable before 3 years. Like we've got a plan to try and make that happen, but we also have to be realistic that did we have that in the reserve? Do we have a 3 to 5 year sort of plan where the owner can put those investments where needed, and make it sustainable? And at the moment to the league, we've got to show that we're going to be around for the next 10, 20 years.
What's the current BBL franchise fee?
So I think you're looking at $350, I think it is, or something like that. Is it $350?
Really?
No, sorry, $150. You're looking at as a franchise fee,
yeah,
and then and then you're looking at $350 minimum investment to try and get through a season. I would say, but probably when you look at the hidden costs, it's a lot more than that. So I think that's the scary part. I think if you want to look at a franchise, I think that it's a fantastic investment, but it's everything that's behind it that you've got to look at, because you're looking at the next 3 years of putting in a minimum of 350 is steep.
You say there it's a fantastic investment. The question is it? We've seen the sustainability of clubs, especially this off season particularly, with both Worcester and Plymouth going down. And I think one of the sort of big conversations that has been happening a lot recently, especially with the success that Solent have had in Division 1, is what is the incentive to have a professional franchise? Because if at Division 1 level, you're packing your arena or your venue every single week, you've got the budgets to bring in good teams, be competitive, win everything. What do you get from the BBL that you wouldn't necessarily get from playing in Division 1? What do you think? What is the value of having a BBL franchise? Where do you think the return is going to come from?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting question. I think first and foremost, it starts with where you're at. So if we look at our owner is specifically thinking about legacy for the city. So he's a businessman at heart. He runs a multi-million-pound business, and that's what he's focused on. Sport is not something that he just looks at trying to make it sustainable as quickly as it possibly can, and anything extra that's made goes back into the club. So you can see that from Gloucester City Football Club. That's what he's done over the last 3 years. And if you look at now got the right manager, now got the right staff in place, got a great playing staff, got a great culture, so that's what he's invested in. That's what ticks his box. I think it's probably a difficult question to answer in terms of your financial model, because like you said, if you look at a Solent, you look at a Reading, etc., they've been growing, without the BBL and without the need of the BBL. But my passion, that's why I stepped in and did the BBL show this year, is I want to try and help them get to a level that we all feel that they can reach. Last year, I felt like during a pandemic, which is ridiculous to say, I think that they made a big step, and maybe everybody realised that something that you've been preaching forever is that we need to be taking this media and comms side of things on such a bigger level. And once everybody has done that, there's maybe been a bit of an awakening around that situation. But yeah, I mean, ultimately it's just the aim has got to be playing at the highest level, and then the highest level has got to provide that reason for a Solent and a Reading to take a next step, because we're kind of crying out for that. And Worthing. There's so many teams that you could mention that would just be great to see in the BBL and creating like bigger rivalries and things like that. Maybe what we've got to look sometimes is we've got to look to take a step back sometimes to take a step forward. So some of these teams aren't entering due to much bigger restrictions than just finances. There's a lot you have to show, and I admire the BBL for learning from probably the past and trying to make sure that process is improved. But I think the product would just be bigger and better with those teams involved. So however that's got to happen would probably help us grow. But there's no quick answer to this situation. If you look, you've got Newcastle and Leicester in a situation, and London now with the finances that are in a position that a professional league. You look at them and you see that setting. Everybody else is working their butts off. I can assure you, everybody I speak to are trying to bust it to take it to the levels that it needs to be, and also those clubs individually. So they've been fantastic with us. They've almost been mentors. You talk about the Russell Levinstons, you talk about the Paul Blakes, you talk about Vince. Those guys have been great as well in sort of saying, look, how do we help this happen for you guys? It's got to be the right thing, and it's got to be the right vision, but we want to grow.
It's interesting. Like, I remember I did the owners roundtable during the start of the lockdown last year, and we were discussing like the sort of the value of a franchise and what you're getting for your franchise fee. And in that conversation, I was quite surprised to hear the response was, you get advice from us. Like, that was essentially what you're getting. And I know that there have been other owners in the past, namely John Sawyer from London City Royals, who was very clear about the fact that, I paid a franchise fee and I'm not seeing, like, you pay, essentially a franchise is a set of sort of operating procedures, policies, business plans of that you can then just take, roll out and say you're a BBL franchise, and everyone's running things in the same way. And he was saying that, there is I'm not getting anything for my franchise fee. There is no clear path or sort of documentation of how this should be done. And actually, I'm just trying to work it out by myself. I'm calling other owners and, exactly like you're saying, sort of having mentorship, which is great because, everyone it seems to be very forthcoming and supportive of new franchises. But at the same time, surely there needs to be some standard operating procedures or clear documentation of how things are going to work. And I don't know whether that's changed since in the last year and a half. Obviously, with franchises leaving and stuff, maybe there's been a reassessment of policies. But just, in the situation that you've been in, kind of seeing everything that you've seen, having gone through that process very recently and going through that process at the moment, do you feel like it's clear to you what you need to do to succeed, and there has been any sort of documentation or information provided to you that you're getting for what you'll be paying for the franchise fee to help you have success both on and off the floor?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely improved. Is it flawed? Yeah, because we're not there. If it was perfect, then we wouldn't have had the Worcester situation. We wouldn't have the Plymouth situation. So, there's no point trying to glorify something that needs to improve. But do I see the right people? Do I see new and improved documentation? Do I feel good about the situation? Yes. I think there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that I'm not necessarily privy to. Everybody else is hearing lots of the same noise and things like that. That sounds like it can only be a good thing. I think from my situation, I'm just fortunate that I've had the experiences that I've had with the BBL, so that kind of leans me to maybe having a slightly different view, because I don't need to have my hand held as much, and maybe there's some things that maybe haven't been asked of me, but then I've put them forward, or there's questions that maybe if you were coming in it as a new ownership, like I've asked, that they've gone, great question, like that. We'll have to come back to you on that. So it is a different lens for me, and I guess that is why, Alex has sought out me in particular, just because I've it's not just about seeing it from a bird's eye view. I've seen it from kind of every level, so I understand what things we need to have in place. I think I've got a good understanding of where the league's trying to go. And like you said, like the mentorship is invaluable. Like if you look at people like Leicester and Newcastle, and they're not all together the same models. So maybe that's something that the league can grow, is more of that sort of plug and play. Like a couple of things I'd like to see is just all the social media running kind of the same way as what you would see. Like I know you're just as big a fan of NBO in Australia as I am. Like I'm mad about that. I tend to look at that a lot and see what they're doing and see how they're trying to how they have grown the game. Sadly, I think the pandemic is stepped them back slightly, but not, it doesn't seem on recent form. Some of the things they're announcing from a sponsorship perspective, it looks like they're going to just grow right back in. So,
I think they just announced a 3-year, $20 million a year deal with ESPN yesterday or the day before yesterday. So, that to me is the case study of what is possible. If you get things right, And I don't think there are obviously some big differences between Australia and the UK culturally and everything else, but it does show that with the right investment, with the right people involved, like it is possible, and it gives me hope because it does feel like the BBL is moving in the right direction, but it also feels like very slow, and there's clear it's clear for everyone involved and everyone around it that there's much more that can be done still. When you're looking at kind of what you're trying to do, like I think the original, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the original plan was to have both the BBL and the WBBL franchise for 2022-23 season. Was that, or was it always the plan to have WBBL earlier? And obviously, I know that there was an application. You kind of, when Worcester and Plymouth withdrew, there was an option to potentially, you tried to see if you could sort of fast track the BBL franchise as well. Like, kind of, what was the original plan, and of course, like how has that ended up panning out now?
Yeah, I think original plan 2022-23 at the earliest, so that was what we came to the league with. We thought that was a sensible suggestion. We took it to, we were able to have Russ and Paul just kind of have a look at it and look at the timelines. And I was like, look, there's a lot of things I know, there's a lot of things I don't know. I think that this gives us a little bit of time to make up that shortfall and spend some time learning some lessons. For me, how the WBBL kind of came into that was just my growth, I think, last year, like doing the BBL show and getting to know people like Siobhan and Rianne, and just seeing, I felt the women's game last year took like a big step forwards, in terms of it just sort of was able to come out of the shadows slightly, and once you were able to kind of see it as a as a product, and we were able to see the Kennedy Leonards of this world and stuff like that, I think that there's so much potential. So I guess the conversation about the WBBL started around the finals, so Newcastle London game, and just able to speak to the BBL, and I kind of shared my vision on that I was like, look, if they kind of both come in at the same time, does our WBBL franchise suffer because of it? So could we accelerate it? Could we look to try and bring it in this season? It would be a great learning curve for me, because it would be on a slightly smaller scale. We would be able to learn the lessons without maybe such harsh restrictions. The BBL and WBBL do have slightly different rulings around things, the necessity side of things, like in terms of things like fan base and different situations like that. So they were pretty receptive to that idea, and that's been my premise ever since with that, is that we just want to give the women's game its limelight, come in, be in the city, be the stars of the city, be the stars of the community, like see what it feels like for them. And that's been a great selling point for us, I think, in the players that we've been able to sign so far, is just giving them a very clear heads up that we're going to be really putting them at the forefront, and are they ready to to kind of handle that? Are they ready to be on that kind of pedestal in the city? And because if you look around the city, you've got the rugby, you've got the football. We come in with this women's basketball that sits in a really nice niche for us and has been really well received. So we just want to make sure we do that justice. And then just, I guess, the clarity around the Worcester and the Plymouth situation was just, joint conversation with the league is that initially when the Worcester situation happened, I just asked the question. I said, like, how is everything looking? How is it set up? We're a new franchise trying to come into this situation. Should we worry? And they were kind of like, no, like if we go down to 9, like there may be a conversation to be had. So can you be ready? I don't think that there's going to be anything happen. And for me, to be honest, I was relatively relaxed about it. I was like, who'd have thought Plymouth, and then that situation happened. So mutual conversation, but again, some plans for us have changed for the better, but that has given us more reason to be patient going for 2022-23. So what we would have had to undertake in a 6-week period would have been just astronomically unfair on us. And they recognised it, and we recognised it, and I'm sure, like, from my owner's perspective, like, he just would take on anything, like he's all in and just wants to jump into that situation. So I know he was a little bit disappointed that we can maybe move it forward, but I think in reality, 2022-23 is going to be a really nice fit for us.
Do you feel pretty confident that you will have the franchise accepted for the BBL franchise accepted for 2022-23?
I feel confident that we're putting ourselves in the right situation to be accepted. So where we're at the moment is obviously WBBL done. That's fantastic. We're really looking forward to that, and I'd probably say we're about 80% through the BBL process. So. First draft of the plans went in. We needed to make some changes that sort of kind of came out of the blue that are great. They're really good changes for us. So we had to make those necessary changes, put that back in, and now we're just waiting to hear if we need to just make any other adjustments. But yeah, it's been the process itself has been great. Like, I've really enjoyed the process. The way that they went about the WBBL process was really good, really fun. And then, this process at the moment is the right thing. They're asking the right questions, and it's not all the time about us maybe getting something wrong or anything else like that. It's kind of like, can you expand on this? Can you show how this is how does this have sustainability? Which is right up our alley. That's what we've been focused on, and I think. Maybe that's been misconstrued. I think there's a few people out there that maybe thought we were being a bit arrogant and we were trying to jump on other people's losses and stuff like that. But that's really not how that conversation came about from either us or the league. The conversation was, Worcester bow out. For us, or for me personally, that's a disaster. Like that's a derby game. You've got Worcester and Bristol around us. I really felt that there's something that we could grow there around the rivalries that is only going to enhance all of our fan bases. So losing them was tough. And then, Plymouth took them down to the 9 where the conversation was going to happen. So yeah, it was a little bit different than maybe how it played out online, but. We just want to be sustainable. So it's not going to be about trying to come into the league, and it's probably not fair to say do a Royals, like it's not meant that way. But we're not coming in there to have this huge budget and blow everybody out of the league. We're here to be here for the next 20 years. That's our plan.
Yeah, talking about sustainability, what would you say to people that sort of come from the side of we want to see teams have worked their way up for a number of years over the National League, built out their infrastructure, built out their fan base, built out their community programs before getting the BBL franchise. Like even if you're going 2022-23, for it to have happened in essentially a year and a half, 2 years, like it's still relatively quick for a new club, so to speak. Like, do you feel that it's possible to get to that sustainability as a new franchise in such a short period of time. What would you say to the people, the fans that kind of say, oh, we want to see longer standing clubs that have spent years building out infrastructure and proven that they're going to be around for a longer period of time?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate both sides of the coin. If I'm honest with you, like I agree with them and disagree with them all in the same breath, because I'm one of those guys that are sitting there that desperately want to. What is that noise?
I don't know. I can hear it as well.
It's gone now.
It's gone.
That was freaking me out. Sorry, I completely lost my frame. That's ridiculous. It's probably a kid's toy. Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, like I've just said to you guys, like, Solent, get them in. Reading, get them in. And there's so many other clubs that I'm sure I'm leaving out, and they've done it the right way and they've grown it and things like that. But then that still hasn't led to them, being able to satisfy this other side of the coin, which is always going to come down to finance. And that's what guys need to understand, is that you're going to get to a point where you need that investment. So both parties need each other, So from our perspective, yes, we have a lot of work to do. But in doing research, like, we think that the area is there for growth. We feel like we can build that community area. We feel that we can do that quickly. We feel like there's a number of things that have been established over time that have been like this, and if we can steady that consistency from a community side of things, partnerships are going to be the real key. Like, how good, how strong are these partnerships going to be? That is going to show us how successful that we're going to be. So yeah, I mean, I can totally understand it, but we're not focused on only just buying ourselves into a league and doing it that way. But at some point, you are going to need that finance. You are going to need that investment, because the BBL and its future are not focused on whether we can stay in a sports centre forever, or whether we can stay in a pavilions forever, which is still a phenomenal venue for me. But if we've got to have these aspirations, we've got to be all going in the same direction as the Leicesters and the Newcastles. And, yes, obviously London are playing out of the copper box. That's a slightly different situation, but still a phenomenal venue. So we've got to look at it that way. And I think that you've got to either go one way or the other, right? So you've got to either embrace that elitism and really bring it up to that level, or like I was saying earlier, you've got to take a step back, maybe relax the rules, because there is still a really strong fan base, maybe not the size that you would desire, but there's a strong enough fan base. Let them come in and let them grow, and maybe that's where you're talking about this advice or this support, maybe that's where it needs to go into, is that next stage. So once you've gone tier one, we've got them in, the fan base is solidified. Can we then tier two give them that advice where they can grow, find a suitable venue, or understand how to fund the venue themselves, or what investment that they need? So, I can see everybody's viewpoint, but at the end of the day, I've got somebody I'm really close with that wants to invest in something that they've enjoyed and loved for a long period of time. They've got the finances to do it. I think we're bringing in the knowledge that we need to grow it. So yeah, no arrogance around us just buying in. It's not like that. But I totally understand what people are saying. Work through the leagues, but why sometimes? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
why is it just to do it because it satisfies everybody's mindset that we should be doing this whole situation? But if you don't have to go through some of the pains of some of the other clubs, and that's what I'd love to see, some of the other clubs just open up, and these are the pains we went through. You don't have to do that for the next 5 years. But I don't know, I think we're the UK, right? We enjoy that. We enjoy, you have to go through the pain, and then when you kind of get to the top, like, we're still going to give you a shoe in, like that's our mentality, I think, sometimes. So earn the right. Yes, I get it. Buy the right. If you've got the right structure and you've got the right people, then why not?
You mentioned it in just there, sort of the importance of the venue, and it's something that we've heard, time and time again from many other BBL owners, and clubs in general, that the importance of, one, having your own facility in the long term, but two, in the shorter term, having a suitable place to play out of, that is affordable and sort of meets various criteria. Like, I had a quick look. There's a sort of 360 virtual tour of your home venue, which is at University of Gloucestershire, right? I think. So yeah, can you kind of talk about like the sort of selecting of the home venue? What you think about the venue that you do have, how much seating it's got. In terms of your business plans, what you're expecting in terms of ticket sales, and doing a good job in terms of filling it really.
Yeah, I think in terms of venue, really like the conversation was around the fact that it was really the only suitable venue that could have worked for us. That had to be the first and foremost conversation. Luckily, and I say luckily, it wasn't any skill involved. Luckily, two really great partnerships to get around the table. So University of Gloucestershire, we've hit them up right at a time of ambition and change. So that's the luck part, that we're having a conversation that maybe a year ago would have been netball only conversation, to now it's like we've seen what we can do with the netball. We'd like to push forward now and we'd like to grow. And then Aspire, which is they're kind of a council offshoot. They're the ones that run the evening part of the facility. So Oxtor Sports Park is separate away from the campus, not too far. It's just a walk down a pathway. But there's a tennis centre. There's the actual sports park itself that has got not just really great facilities, but also sort of world class classroom facilities and stuff down there. Excuse me. So yeah, they run the evening part of the facility. So easily with that in mind, that could have been really, really complicated if you had the wrong people come around the table. But it was a really good, flowing, easy conversation. Our plans were, this was kind of our tier one part of our business plan. So at the moment, there's they can hold 750 plus. There's an opportunity for them to be able to build in extra seating. So there's always been a level of the plan left for them to have growth if needed. The netball has grown at a rate of noughts, so that they've probably outgrown the facility. So they're having less and less games at the University of Gloucestershire. So I guess they've probably got one eye to what the future looks like for the venue. Great venue, absolutely love it. And then the reason why we changed the business plan is because then we kind of had this tier two that came in. So there was only ever going to be two tiers. So tier one was working alongside the university. Tier two was working with council, Sport England, et cetera, trying to see the viability of building an arena. There's a lot of land still left at Gloucester City Football Club that we could look at. There's a few other options that the council had presented to us that were more similar to the Leicester model of what they built in the city. But Aspire themselves kind of came out of nowhere with a slightly aging £15 million building that's situated right in the inner city. That is kind of a similar venue to the Pavilions, I guess, and they floated the idea that, look, it hasn't been taken seriously as a sports facility for quite a while, but if they put the investment in, they refurbed, maybe some effort from the council to be able to grow the seating. So at the moment, comfortably, they could hold 2,000 if we were able to have a centre court. So there's two courts. There's you roll out the centre court through the middle. There's enough room there, and then there's another side that could still be built on, and still a possibility to bring us up to around about that 3,000, which is that probably bare minimum for us to to be able to have that for a while, you know, and financially, those conversations have been great. So they were well aware of the differences between the BBL and the WBBL. So there's been kind of two separate deals able to be built across into our game day experiences. And then just from a fan base perspective, that's probably where we need that's probably where we need to work our hardest, right? So we've got you know, we've got this access to Gloucester City Football Club that have been the whole fan base has been really, really invested in what we're trying to do. So we're trying to engage them in this Gloucester Sport conversation, being together. We've been able to bring this partnership in with the youth development, so being able to work with Gloucester Saxons, so being able to work with them and how we're going to engage them and get them to games. And then there's been this whole community piece, how we can work with our partners. So, you know, we've got the University of Gloucestershire, we've got St. Peter's High School, we've got a number of really, really good businesses that have come and had meetings with us that want to not just be involved as sponsors, but they want to try and bring us investment. So if you look at Metro Bank, like that's been, you know, a massive investment for us that's only going to grow. And part of that whole plan was not just built around finance, you know, so there was a level of expectation around the finance, but also they had a level of expectation of how they could help us as well. You know, can they introduce us to sponsors? Can they have more game day interaction? Can they have more player interaction? So they were really great to have a conversation with. And then locally as well, there's been some local businesses that just, look, we want to sponsor you, but we want to get involved. And you know, we're not just playing on this. This is realistic, but we really want to take this whole women in sport push to that level in the city where we are reaching out to you know, female owners, female investment, et cetera. We want to get into those conversations of, come on, you know, we're putting this at the forefront. Come and have the same conversations, you know. So yeah, we're confident, but it's bloody hard work. It really is. You know, you have to really want to get stuck in, and you know, as you said, we are on a faster timeline than maybe some people would anticipate, and we've got every minute counts, you know.
What have been the biggest surprises for you in this whole process that maybe you weren't aware of until you actually got involved? That's been a big surprise. It's kind of like, oh, I didn't realise that, you know, this would be a thing, or we'd have to take care of this, or kind of, I guess for the average person looking in from the outside, it'd be interesting to kind of hear your experiences, you know, your expectations coming in compared to things that maybe have caught you off guard that you hadn't planned for, hadn't expected.
I think from a BBL perspective, just how seriously they've taken the arena situation, you know, so we really have to get to a level of detail that I really genuinely thought would just be a conversation year 3, you know. So like to be doing that early doors, that's kind of, you know, I'm just lucky I've got, you know, we've got Alex, and then you talk about Eamon and stuff like that. Like the level of knowledge they've got around construction and things like that is probably part of what's accelerated this process and what is. And
just to clarify, both of their business backgrounds is like their businesses are sort of plant hire, excavation, like construction, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, and that's basically how they were able to throw themselves into the project of overcoming what is essentially a flooded area to be able to put their home back. And you know, I invite anybody to come and just check out that facility, because every time people come, they're like, one, they didn't know it was there. You know, at the minute we've got to do a better job of telling the whole city that it's there, and then two, just how impressive it is. You know, so that's put us in good stead, you know, because we've able to give them an example of what we've able to achieve under a time constraint, you know. So that's been a 3-year project that was supposed to be a 5 to 7 year project. So that's an idea of how fast that those two can work. So yeah, that's probably been the level of surprise for me. I think everything else I expected, that devil in the detail, the performance pathway they're taking a lot more seriously. So I don't know how seriously they were taking it before, but they've said to me that they're making that a much more mandatory conversation, which is great for me because that's what our focus is. Again, we're not going from Division 3 and working ourselves all the way through, but we are going to have all of that and more. So we will have a Division 3 team running this year. That will link into the Bucks into going into year 2. We will have a Division 2 women's team that will link into the Bucks as well, and then we've got this spine of Gloucester Saxons of the working with the under 12s all the way through to under 18s, and even plans of what we're going to do to increase participation below that. So that was expected. And then any surprises? I guess for me, it's just how fast things can change. So for me, it was kind of, we put our business plan in. We felt really good about it. The plan was Oxtalls. The plan was to go with University and Aspire, and then obviously Aspire came in and said, hey, how about we look at this through a different lens? And I literally went for one meeting that I thought was just about the partnership, and we ended up coming out with potentially a 3,000 seat arena. Try and get your head around that after, a 5-minute sort of conversation has turned into now you're looking at a new facility. And you have to be a visionary. You have to be creative in these settings. So if you're just looking at it there and then, most people may have been like, nah, because we've got a brand new Oxtalls sports park over there. But you've got to have a vision. How are we going to engage the community? We're in the central, we're in the middle of the city. There was lots to love about that situation, and I kind of fell in love with that instantly. And then you sat there then trying to gather all your thoughts on how that's going to change and how do you speak to the league. And so that's probably been the most surprising bit for me, is just how quickly you've got to be able to transition. Because I could be in a conversation like that, and then 5 minutes later I'm recruiting, and then 5 minutes after that I might be speaking to a sponsor, and then 5 minutes after that I might be talking about a new partnership somewhere. So it's it's thick and fast. It's kept me on my toes, that's for sure. Like I said, few extra grey hairs, but that's the way forward, right?
I always say it's amazing what doors open up when you actually put something out into the universe like that. Like it's easy to for us to sit around and say, oh, I'd love to have a purpose-built facility or a BBL franchise or whatever it is. But actually, when you start putting those plans, rather than just an idea in your head, onto paper, and you start having conversations with people, doors start opening. People start having conversations. Oh, you hear, Sam's trying to do this. Oh, like we've got a potential option here, and then all of a sudden it just starts happening. But you have to take those first initial steps to actually start actioning it, rather than it just still being an idea in your head, right? Like, one of the things I wanted to ask, and it seems to be a recurring issue every season for various franchises, is visas. And I know, there's been situations, obviously, with you as a franchise. I think at the moment the timeline is January 22, potentially, for you to be able to start getting sort of visa players in. Like, can you kind of talk us through, for the fan that's got no idea how this process works, what is the situation with signing import players, and how does it work? What do you need to have as a franchise, and what is it that takes so long?
Yeah, visas, man. Like, you just made me mad. Like, it's just making me angry. No, it's a whole part of it. And again, you got to take these things into consideration. If you go wandering in with armed with no information, then of course you're going to look like a numpty. So with us, like. You have to, first of all, you have to get your governing body endorsement. So that's going to come with being improved, So we couldn't do that before. We have to be accepted. We're accepted into the WBBL. Fantastic. We can go then and get our governing body letters. You then have to apply for your certificate of sponsorship to the Home Office. And, due to the pandemic, that's probably now 3 to 6 months rather than 8 weeks to 3 months, so that's really been challenged and really been extended. For the WBBL, like, it's frustrating, of course, because only because of I've got good contacts in good areas, and you're kind of given players that you could see that could really elevate what you're trying to do. But we always knew in our head what it was going to look like. So we always knew that, sort of January, February time would give us a time to analyse the roster we're trying to put together. We know those challenges. I guess again, you asked about a learning curve. Another learning curve is obviously Brexit. How much that's changed the game for the better in some ways, for the worse in other ways. So now the European situation is exactly the same as what you've got to go through for your American side of things. So you have to go through the visas. So get the call from a top level Spanish player that's always wanted to play in England but never played. Nope, January, February time, because we've got to wait for our certificate of sponsorship. So yeah, lots to factor in. I'm really glad that we're not going through that from a BBL standpoint. So these are lots of conversations that started happening that were like, from a BBL standpoint, it probably drives your budget up really a lot higher than you would want. Yeah, and that is because British players, top level British players that are going to have us be competitive, are going to be expensive. Rightly so. They've earned the right to ask for their wage. And then also, they have the right to say to me, like, where else are you going to go, buddy? They would know you're kind of stuck. So there's no bargaining power. So yeah, WBBL, does it affect it? No, it just makes the process more frustrating. So I've had to learn really, really quickly. I've picked up the phone to a lot of people. I've asked them a lot of questions. For those people that you are, thank you. I've been constantly badgering people. So that's part of the process, right? If you don't know it 100%, then have enough grace in your craft to go learn.
So do you feel like on the WBBL side, are you gonna fill 12 spots on your roster and then come January potentially cut a bunch of players and bring in imports? Like, how are you actually thinking about approaching that?
No, I think we're gonna go short on our rotation. So we're looking at sort of 6 or 7 pros. And then we're looking at the rest of that as a development process, so we're trying to bring in players that we think we can develop. That's tough, because we're late in the game. We ran a trial. We've probably had enough interest to maybe run another trial as well to have a look at some players. There were some really good players, but again, like lots of players that come with loads of different challenges, and they're in different situations in life, and maybe they're looking at the university element that we don't 100% have nailed down with University of Gloucester at the minute. So like we're working through this. We're both new, so University of Gloucester not really had that many sports partnerships to go through. Yeah,
I was going to say, do you have scholarships at the moment to be able to offer to players?
Well, we do, but it's kind of understanding what that is, and that late in the game. It's the conversations at the moment is, do we legitimately look at it next year so that we've got a handle on what we're doing? Can we bring in a couple of players and go through the pain of the first year of what that looks like for the university? So that we're sort of knee deep in those kind of conversations at the moment. So because with the university, it's student recruitment, it's student experience. So one thing that maybe the listeners won't see is like we're not just specifically focused on players that can play basketball. We're focused on like internships for media and comms, for example. So we look at people like yourself. We look at Joe. Joe's a fascinating conversation we had with the BBL show, like where he was talking about just how self-taught he was. That really shocked me, like how much he had done himself. And I'm sure you probably got similar stories if I picked your brain. So we've got a whole internship of media coming in. We've got a whole internship of performance behind us. So student experience isn't just about student athlete. It's generally about how we can integrate with the whole university. And even some people coming on board that aren't necessarily sport. I've gone after the most creative and best photographers and videographers, and hopefully with my passion for sport and their passion for creative, we'll find something that's different. And that's what I want to do. Is I don't want to copy what the Riders are doing, for example. So we're using 5 or 6, but I say that all the time. I'm like, what makes us different? And Pete's like, I've got you. So I think we'll be 7. So we'll be light on our roster. And it depends how much of those European spots we use as well, because you have to bear in mind that if we use maybe a third European, for example, then that's going to eat into our non-nationals. So that means we can only have 2, and there's so many factors to get us to February. But yeah, a lot of those younger players will be there for experiences, and if we do end up having 12 on our roster, there'll be 2 players that we're just trying to develop this year, and they have a crystal clear understanding that they're probably not going to play anyway. And then those other players we bring in depends on their experience. So, January and February, if we're in the mix and we feel like one player might make a big difference for us, then we'll go for it. But we're not going to be idiots. If it's going to move the needle by a position, which is going to ultimately just take some pressure off us as a franchise, we're not into that. Like that's not our model. If we think it puts us in the mix and we can do something special like Newcastle did last year, that was a magical ride for them. That was worth everything, I think, for them to have that experience. And sadly, they bowed out to London at the end, but that doesn't take anything away from the journey they had. And then hopefully, what we want to do with these media and comms is tell those stories. Then get behind the scenes and look at that journey if we're lucky enough to experience one.
In terms of on the floor performance, I would assume you kind of in your head have an idea of where you want to sort of where you're hoping to sit come the end of the season. Win-loss record wise, and I know obviously I listened to your interview both on with James and on the Two Brits One Orange Ball podcast, and then of course your piece on the BBL show. And one thing you've been clear is that we're not just in a league to make up the numbers. Like, we're trying to be competitive. It's not just about we've done the work now. We've got a franchise and that's it. Like, we're trying to win. Kind of what are your expectations about performance on the court? Both I guess from BBL WBBL franchise next season, and then when you enter the BBL, or hopefully all things going well when you enter the BBL next season. What is your sort of target, sort of win-loss record-wise, playoffs-wise? Like, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I think the reason why we've got to be honest and say we're not there to make up the numbers is we haven't got the development behind us that a Cardiff or an Oaklands or a Durham or even Caledonia, like they're doing some really special things. We've got to build that later on and bring that in. So at the moment we are bringing players in to be professionals. And like I said to you, I want to put them on that pedestal. I want to test them. I want to push them, see what they can do. I think our outward expectations it will always just be to show the league that they made the right decision in bringing us into the league. And there's a number of different factors to that. So you say attach a record to it. It's not necessarily going to be about record. It's going to be about how they feel when they come to us as a home venue, how we represent ourselves when we play away at their venues. So very much at the minute, it's very much culture driven. That's where we want to be. Do we want to be pushing for a playoff spot? Like, absolutely. We want to be in the mix. We want to be around all the fun. We've seen what happened last year, and we don't want to miss out on that. We don't want to have FOMO in that scenario. So, but we've got a long way to go. We're putting a brand new team together, and everybody knows that. People think outwardly that it's a right and a wrong, but it's all about the fit. So there's sometimes you bring a team together and they've just got that special mix that within 2 weeks they're rolling. I think a really good example of that is Newcastle. Like, you looked around and thought that they had 1 million veterans, and they didn't. They only had 3 returning players from that whole group. So that tells you how strong their culture is to be able to turn that around. But they hit the ground running. Faced a bit of adversity, sort of midway through, and then came out the other end. And then there's other teams that take a while just to blend, and all I can do when I'm recruiting is look at it, and it looks like it fits from a puzzle perspective, and let's see where we get to in pre-season. So, yeah, inwardly we'll have our own conversations as to what that looks like statistically, what that looks like from a almost a KPI perspective, I guess. We're setting goals for ourselves. Outwardly, we just want to make sure that we're showing who we truly want to be, and what that looks like moving forward. I think from a BBL perspective, it's going to be a lot tougher road, right? Because I think even by next season, like, a lot of these teams are kicking on. You're looking at Cheshire, for example, and you're thinking, wow, like, they seem to have, if you speak to Coach Thomas, they seem to have just made some good, sensible financial decisions that we're going to stand them in good stead for this year. Leicester are returning a bunch. Newcastle, I'm sure, will come again, and London are retooling and stacking up. So yeah, and with less teams in the league as well, that it's going to make it even more competitive for those spots. Because you got a team like Manchester Giants, for example. You have to imagine by the time we get to 2022 and the ambition of Jamie Edwards that they're going to be in a much more solid position. They've got the right coach. I really like Coach Gardner, and I think he's a guy that can build things. So that's a tougher one to call, I think, because there's such more steeped finance put into that situation that we're going to have to pay our dues, I think, from that perspective, and time will tell.
One of the big pieces of the puzzle that is yet to be announced or hasn't been confirmed yet, or is the head coach of the WBL program. And I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, that actually recruiting the team and putting together a roster when you don't have the coach makes it challenging, and actually might make it more difficult to then recruit the coach because the coach doesn't have an input on the signings. Like, how have you balanced that up, and is there any way we can get any type of exclusive on who the head coach might be?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is we're not balancing it at all at the minute. Like, so we had a coach, and it's just not the right time right now. So we felt it was good timing. It turned out it wasn't good timing, and we maybe need to be a little bit more patient to see how that one plays out. And
you can't reveal who that was?
And then no, not at the minute, no, because it's still may be on the table for this season or next season. So yeah, that just wasn't the right time, and it didn't work out. And we're just being relaxed. If I'm honest with you, we're just playing a bit of a poker face, because we know that if we get right down to the wire, that I can coach. Well, yeah, hopefully I can coach. So we can be relaxed. It's not ideal that I'm having to recruit, but we're already behind the curve. So if we kind of wait, and we don't have our visas. So we're almost at a necessity where we're having to bring players in. I think that the great answer is we're in a really comfortable grey area at the minute, because I've got some really great young coaches coming through that I'm mentoring for the future, that I've got really, really high hopes of, and we'll be announcing those soon. And then, yeah, just continue to take calls. Continue to have conversations, and if something fits, we'll take it. But if it doesn't, I'm probably downplaying myself. Worst case scenario, then I might have to, step in the breach. So, yeah, a comfortable grey area. So if it wasn't for the fact that I could coach, I would be panicking my backside off at the minute, because I was really hopeful of who we were talking to. I thought it was a great spot. But yeah, I mean, I'm really, really passionate about the WBBL. Like, I'm really, really excited about that. I think for some people, it's kind of a conversation that's brushed over to get us to the BBL. And, you know, I have a really pretty good plan A. I have a pretty good plan B as to what we're going to do with the BBL moving forward. That's quite clear. I think with the WBBL, we want to make sure that we really give it its flowers this year. Like, I really, really want to push us to that next level from just from an expectation. I think when you start getting into salary conversations with these players, you know, we've got to do better. You know, we have to do better in the UK. Like, and just because it works now doesn't mean that that's how it should be for them. They want to be professionals. They want to be taken seriously. We've got to do more, as in we, the league, we, the Basketball England, etc., to make sure that we can, you know, keep our best talent and they can earn a living. You know.
Yeah. Do you feel like that the WBBL can get gets maybe less focused because of the fact that a lot of the clubs, you've got a BBL franchise and a WBL franchise, so it's almost the same people that are trying to juggle both, and then naturally the BBL ends up taking precedence because it was their priority in the first place, and I would assume that it's the bigger revenue generator, and so the WBL franchises haven't had the focus or the attention that maybe they need to be able to get to the levels that, you know, you're talking about and that we all sort of aspire for it to be at.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just early doors into these conversations, but I mean, the conversations we're having, like, you know, everybody is locked into doing exactly what I'm talking about. You know, they want to grow the game, and you know, you're talking about, you know, Market London, for example. You know, is about to take a really big step for us. You know, just as big a step as it was for the BBL last year when Vince was taking the Lions into Europe. So that's going to be big for us. Is that we need to be ready to, when the eyes do come onto us, is we need to be making sure we're presenting ourselves the right way. But yeah, I think that's one of the conversations myself and Alex had. You know, that's why we thought it was a good time to put our hat in for the WBBL now, because we felt, looking around, that maybe it just is the case that the BBL has always been the main body of the business plan. You know, so when a lot of these teams and stuff were talking to us and saying doesn't really move the needle for us, it doesn't really do much for us, it's like, how much is it getting focused? So, you know, that would be a trial and error lesson for us this year. Is at the moment, it seems like it's really well received in the city. It feels like it's a good time to be saying the things that we're saying and having the conversations we're having, but we're not going to know right until we're right in the fire and we're getting our asses burnt, you know. So we're going to have to be able to move and operate quickly. But I think I love the game, you know. I love watching the WBBL. You know, I watch a lot of college women's basketball. I watch a lot of WNBA. And I guess if you're a basketball geek, then the technicality of the women's game is just so appealing, right? You know, just love just sitting there and taking notes of how these things may be unfolded without, you know, King James doing something, you know, absolutely unbelievably athletic. You know, it's actually the devil in the detail has actually played out. So, you know, I'm excited. I think there's a product there. And hopefully, I think if we put it where it should be, we can raise the bar and maybe challenge everybody else in the league to take another step. You know, I was quite surprised when we announced Marley. You know, the league said that we were the first team to announce a player. You know, and then all of a sudden, you know, other people have kind of started pushing that boat and started getting their signings out. So that only adds to the excitement, right? If we can start doing that and doing a better job, you know, we can do a better job even. You know, we're relying on the graphics of 5 or 6 right now. We need to get more structure in underneath us and do more. And people want, I guess you're getting this all the time, people want more, right? They want to be behind the scenes. They don't just want the superficial, you know, club answers. They want what's going on, dig deeper, get behind the scenes. And we want to show people that we're perfectly transparent. We've got nothing to hide.
Yeah. Amazing. So I'm aware of time here, so kind of I guess as we start thinking about coming to a close, what are your immediate priorities over the next sort of, I guess, through to the end of the summer, coming into the new season, and then over the next 18 months as you start looking towards the BBL as well?
Well, so the next 3 days, myself and the owner are going to be locked in a room down here in Plymouth. So we've kind of both come down. He's got some family down here, so locking ourselves in a room and seeing how much work we've got to do in August. We've got to be ready. We're looking at pre-season probably 1st of September for us. So now we've got to organise that pre-season. We think we're pretty much there with that. Our biggest stresses are the entertainment we're going to provide. So we're working on that at the minute, what we're going to provide. How are we going to get these bums on seats? So we've had a lot of interest, a lot of intrigue. Does that translate? And then how much we've got to do there. We're really grateful. We've got all our main shirt sponsors, which is fantastic. So now it's just kind of focusing on player sponsorship, the on-court sponsorship, what they're going to get back for that. So those are the kind of things that we are a little bit behind the curve in. So we're in control at the minute, but if we don't make a big push in August, we could be behind the 8 ball a little bit from that side of things. But yeah, we're feeling confident and relaxed. We've got some good partnerships to announce. Like I said, we still haven't fully talked about what the University of Gloucestershire holds for us. We haven't fully talked about what Aspire holds for us. We haven't fully talked about what St. Peter's High School holds for us as a kind of a performance centre for us. So those are 3 things that we're looking to highlight in August, and then just get ready. I'm just looking forward to, I think we've got some really good girls. Like, we're talking to some not just great players, we're talking to some really good people off the court. So I'm looking forward to getting them in and spending time with them.
Perfect. I think that's a perfect place to leave it. Thank you so much for giving us the time, giving us behind the scenes look at everything that you've got going on. And of course, wish you all the best for the coming weeks, months, years. I think I speak for everyone when I say I hope that the Gloucester City franchise is a massively successful one and helps push British basketball to the levels that we all want to see it reach.
Yeah, thanks, Sam, and I just want to give you a special shout out. You've been doing some really great work, man. So I'm honoured to be able to come on the show and chat to you, buddy.